on. And we are recording on Monday, December 1st, 2025 at 11:23 a.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Nate Jones, who got in touch a couple weeks ago when we talked. And so we're just, I'll have you introduce yourself in a second, but we're just asking, where's gold going to go? And I have a biology degree. I don't know anything about it, but I tend to just use that as a barometer of like, it's probably the most accurate value of the dollar because the government's inflation numbers are probably horseshit, just like everything else they do. And not only that, though, it's every country for the most part is backed by gold. And it goes in the quote, the what exists or what persists tend to exist or what exists tends to persist. Gold goes all the way back to the pharaohs. And you said, well, why? Now, there could be, and I'm not at all opposed to the idea that there is some like arcane, esoteric use for gold that we don't know about. And it's like, past civilizations, do they rise higher than we have risen? I think that's all out there. In terms of it, though, I think it's just the arbitrary thing we chose to hold value. And why? Well, I mean, most primitively, I don't know. You go back to 6,000 years ago when there was nothing and this thing was just shiny and beautiful. I mean, and heavy and heavier than other things of its size. That kind of might be it. I don't, or it's used as like some sort of like, weird zero gravity alien conductor, and that's how they built the pyramids. And I'm not even saying that like sarcastically. I'm completely open to that. I have no idea. Before we do
Well,
that,
I
though,
think I
could you
think this movie came out before you were born.
probably all of these
There
ideas?
was a movie about the cat from outer space,
No idea.
and it came to Earth to find gold because they needed gold to power their spaceship. But it was a
Oh,
kitty cat.
well, that's the idea of like the Anunnaki, right? It was a race of godlike beings that they exist on whatever the ninth planet or the 10th planet X that we can't see. And
Coming
they came
back.
here and they used humans to like mine for gold because they need gold for their own atmosphere, which kind of sounds like horseshit because if you're capable of interstellar travel, you've probably somehow managed to control fusion to a point where you can add and remove nuclei and protons and make new elements because that's what a hydrogen bomb does briefly is make a ton of elements. Before we go just completely down this schizophrenic rabbit hole, which I'm absolutely 100% on board to do, could you real quick introduce yourselves for everybody listening?
Yes, my name is Nathan Jones, and I started a company called Clear. It's spelled Xlear. I started it in 2000. Prior to that, I was working doing underwater welding, underwater construction out in the Gulf of Mexico on the oil platforms. But I started it because my dad is a physician, and he actually started using this nasal spray to prevent ear infections in babies. He had a lot of kids in his practice that were having recurrent ear infections, and he went online. This is when the internet was brand new, but he went online and queried how to prevent ear infections, and he came up with from the studies he read, he came up with his nasal spray. And so I quit my job and started the company in 2000. Today you can buy our products everywhere. I'm not really here to talk about the products. I'm here to talk about the concepts and public health, hygiene, sanitation, nasal hygiene, oral hygiene. And, oral and nasal hygiene are two things that our public health agencies have ignored. And I think they've deliberately ignored it, but they have deliberately ignored it. And it has cost our country literally trillions of dollars over the years because they have. And one of the things that I could point out is that even in 2000, so 25 years ago, there was a report that came out from our Surgeon General pointing out that the state of oral health in the United States was declining quickly. Okay. So you go back to the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and even into a little bit of the 80s, and the incidence of tooth decay was going down. And it was going down because we had public health agencies that were out there doing their job, and they were out teaching people, hey, brush your hand, or brush your hands, wash your hands, brush your teeth, take a shower. It was because we were getting water, clean water, piped into our houses. And so we were able to take baths. It was because we were able to wash our hands on a regular basis. We were able to clean up our immediate environment, which we consider that hygiene. Sanitation is communal hygiene, like sanitation. They come and pick up your trash and take it away. They bring water to your house. That's considered, sanitation. And the other thing is we had electricity. We were able to have refrigerators. And But where they stopped is they stopped when in the 80s they stopped really going out and doing this. I mean, when I was a child, and I'll date myself, I'm 55. When I was a child, twice a year we would have hygienists come into the schools and they would bring every kid a toothbrush and they would give these little pink pills and you'd chew them up and you'd see where all the pink stuff was on your teeth and they'd teach you and say, "Hey, see, you need to brush your teeth better, blah blah blah." But they don't really do that anymore, which is I mean, I don't understand why, but they should be doing it because that's where people are learning these principles of hygiene. And the principles of hygiene and sanitation have saved more lives than every single drug that you could put together, every single action that the doctors in the hospital have done over the past 100 years. The principles of hygiene and sanitation have saved more lives than all of the medical actions that have been taken in the same time frame.
Yeah, I've had on several times Dr. Stephen Hatfill, but that's one of the things he wrote about in one of his books that I it was one of the most fascinating things I had read is like, yeah, above vaccination, above even it's like what makes not even that, but it's like what makes modern society or dense city centers possible. Because you do hit, we kind of think about cities are just, yeah, people are there. No, you do hit this like self-correcting ceiling of, dysentery or polluted water. And it was like, no, the one thing responsible for the ability to have modern cities now more than anything else is public health. But it's not sexy. You don't really think about it. It's not like, oh, the invention of the internet or it's penicillin. It's no, kind of, wash your hands, and don't shit in the water supply kind of thing. And that alone is responsible for most of it. And I think that's actually kind of his running theory on it's assuming COVID wasn't made in a lab, which it was, and I think he
It
says
was.
so.
Nobody's questioning that
Yeah, and
anymore.
I know, but
Why? Why do you have to question it?
of course you don't. That's why I was banned
Well,
from you.
if COVID wasn't made in a lab, and that small 1 millionth of an off chance.
Yeah, I know, but I see anyone that knows the show knows that's why I got banned from YouTube 4 years ago. It's like I've just that's why I say I don't because I was executed for it. But that's kind of his thing about as society burgeons up against its like limits, then you're gonna have a much let's say it wasn't. All you need is that one in a millionth chance that it happens, and because society is growing so large, it's everything's pushed up against each other physically and metaphorically. That's how it travels quickly. Not to do an immediate 180. Uh, I don't know if you play video games, but Grand Theft Auto 5, there's a mission in it where you're breaking into the FBI headquarters and you got to go in underwater. And I just know it because you got to set up the heist. And part of the game is you got to get all the equipment for the heist. And the really expensive thing is the underwater torch you got to use to destroy the grate so you can fly in or swim in through the sewage and come. Ironically enough,
Why was that? Why was that so expensive?
it's just part of the game. I don't know. It's like you got to set up the heist. That's part of it. Came out in 2013. And it's ironic because, yeah, you're breaking into the FBI and you're doing it on behalf of the CIA because, quote, I'm just not
So
remembering.
you're doing it on the behalf of one corrupt
Yeah, no,
organization.
that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing is like FBI, you're a gangster and then it's FBI and CIA, it's the FIB and the IAA. But that's the whole tongue in cheek thing. It's like, it's just, we're all just gangsters. It's some of us have a badge and some of us don't. But you're going in there, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, to steal it for the CIA, to steal a vial of a bioweapon, which you're going to release on the public to get your funding up. COVID. But yeah, the underwater torch. It's was it oxyacetylene that they use? But that's kind of I just remember that. It's like you got to go get the money to get the torch.
I don't know that we ever used oxyacetylene. I mean, I use that when I'm working above water, but
Okay.
underground, when you're diving in, in the water, granted, you have to remember this is 30, 25 years ago that
Yeah.
I did this. We just used, well, they're not Broco rods, they're not Dragonair, but they're rods and you're just blowing oxygen through them. So you're just losing oxygen and you're burning it, but you're burning it at such a temperature that it's ridiculous. I mean, you can melt rock underwater with these rods.
That's wild, and it doesn't immediately get just soaked up by I guess the heat sink of the
But
water.
you're burning, you're literally vaporizing the
Just
water.
all right. Yeah, I just always wondered how you get that going so hot
Yeah.
to do that. I just finished or I'm finishing up a book about one of the first nuclear subs. And they're talking about as soon as like they had to power down the reactor. it was just, like 30 minutes, everything in the sub started to get cool to the touch because it's just the infinite heat sink of the ocean. Um, yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah. Um, and toward in terms of the oral and nasal hygiene, so they're ignoring it to the tune of trillions of dollars. Let's kind of revisit the theme of COVID. Is it, COVID was made in a lab, 1,000%. Sometimes though, I don't know what the law is. Don't attribute to malice, which can be attributed to incompetence, which I don't really like that law because I think a lot of people use it to say, "Oh, the government's stupid," and I'm like, no, they're maliciously destroying your
I
lab.
think
They're
I
evil
think
people.
prior to COVID, I would have thought that they were just incompetent.
Same.
But after COVID, I mean the stuff. So I don't know if you knew, but the government actually sued me and my company.
No, I
They
didn't.
sued us and they sent us a bunch of warrants. So let me explain the story about this with COVID. Um, so we put our product on the market in 2000. We were selling it. Never had a problem. No issues with the government. It was a nasal hygiene product. We knew that it blocked bacteria like strep pneumo, H flu, MCAT staph from adhering to the tissue in your airway. That's what we always said. We went to a lot of medical conventions and explained it to the doctors. Some doctors understood it. Some of them, they're like, I don't understand this hygiene thing. Because doctors, they're not educated in hygiene, they're not educated in sanitation, they're not educated in nutrition, uh, but they're educated in pharmaceuticals. But a lot of them did understand it, and so that's how we were able to grow as a company. And in 2020, again, COVID is a virus, or SARS-CoV-2 is a virus. We had never discussed viruses. We never mentioned viruses because we didn't have any data on it. In 2020, a pulmonologist that was treating COVID patients actually called us and said, "Hey, you need to find out what's in your product that's doing this because something in it is having a very good effect on the patients that I'm treating with COVID," because he would use our product instead of a saline, and that's what they were doing. And so we actually sent our product up to a lab. And what we found after 4 different rounds of studies was that the xylitol in our nasal spray was blocking the ability of the SARS-CoV-2 virus to adhere to the tissue. Okay. Again, if it can't adhere to your tissue, you're not going to get sick. Secondly, what we learned, and that was a study that we didn't even do, but we found it out at the same time. That was a study that was done at the University of Tennessee, and so we have that there. But what we found in the studies we did is that the grapefruit seed extract that we use as a preservative destroys the virus as effectively as a 70% solution of alcohol. Now, think about this for a minute, because this is where some common sense needs to be applied. Where do the vast majority, close to 98%, of pathogens enter your body?
Respiratory.
Well, it's right here. It's right here. It's in your mouth and your nose. So if these are the gateways where all of the pathogens, roughly all of the pathogens are coming in, where do you think that we should be spending our focus? It should be right there, but yet we don't. Medical, the doctors don't, public health doesn't, nobody does. But that's where you should be focusing. And they've tied back so many of our systemic illnesses to bad oral hygiene, bad nasal hygiene. But anyways, I'm trying to paint a picture here. And so we actually shared that data with the government in, it would have been April, May of 2020. In May, the pulmonologist that had first contacted us, he had actually volunteered to go and do a study using our nasal spray with COVID patients. And the hospital said, well, because it's COVID, you're going to have to go get the FDA to approve the study. And the FDA said, no, you can't do the study. You can't do a drug action study on a product that's considered a cosmetic. Okay, you have to go make your product a drug. Like, we don't want to make our product a drug. Anyways, we got a warning letter from the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, about a week later, and they said, you have to stop making any statements. All these statements you're making are false and misleading. And I said, really, show me a single statement that we've made that is false. Show me a single statement that we've made that is misleading, because we hadn't made it. And we continued to argue back and forth. And what the FTC said was, well, the study at Vanderbilt not at Vanderbilt, sorry. The study at the University of Tennessee was not done on human airway tissue. It was done on kidney monkey tissue, which is the industry standard for the pharmaceutical industry. So the FTC says, okay, it might be good for the pharmaceutical industry, but you have to go do it on a human airway tissue. So we went back and did it on human airway tissue. And when we went back to the FTC, we had looked at, in the study, we looked at RSV, we looked at H1N1, we looked at H5N1, which is bird flu. We looked at SARS-CoV-2 of the Delta strain. Again, this is this would have been early 2021 where we got all this data back. And so we're sitting here presenting this to the FTC saying, hey, this is it. And they said, no, you still can't say it. And I'm like, what do you mean we can't say this? And I said, well, we have it here for RSV showing that xylitol blocks RSV. Why can't we say that? Well, you can say that. Okay, we have it for H1N1. Well, you can say that it blocks H1N1. Okay, so we have it for SARS-CoV-2. No, you can't say that it blocks SARS-CoV-2. And we're like, why? Well, what's the difference? And they said, because we said so. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And they said, no. And we said, okay. And at this point, they've been threatening to sue us. And at this point, I was just like, okay, so they're sitting here saying that we can say it about RSV, H1N1, H5N1, everything except SARS-CoV-2. And at that point, I just said, you know what? Let them sue us because they're not being reasonable. They're being malicious. Okay. They're coming back and saying, well, we told you to, and you didn't want to obey us. And so we're going to sue you anyways. So they sued us.
How do you realistically fight against that though, right? Because that's isn't half the point. The whole process is the punishment, or they just sue you and doesn't they don't half of them kind of doesn't really care. It's just
No, they
that
don't care at all. I mean, they sued us, and this is what drives me nuts, is that we have bureaucrats that are killing people, and they know they're killing people. Like these bureaucrats that were doing it. I mean, I'll tell you their names. It was Richard Cleland, Matthew DeMorris. Was it Matthew DeMorris? But these are lawyers who, if you sat down and read a study, even read a paragraph of it, you would understand that what we were saying was correct. And that in the context of the COVID epidemic or the pandemic, because I don't think it was an epidemic, I think it was a pandemic, simply because every decision that public health made was the wrong decision. If they'd ever made the right decision, it would have been nothing. It was because they made stupid mistakes, whether it came from a lab or whether it came from natural spillover or whether it was a deliberate release by the CIA. If public health had actually made a single right decision, it would have been a nothing, a big nothing burger. But it wasn't. Okay.
and
But these lawyers, what we learned in the deposition is these lawyers didn't even open the studies that we sent them. When we were deposing them, they could not provide us with a single person at the FTC who had opened the studies and read the studies. They kept saying, you don't have the data and the studies to back it up. Well, okay, we've sent them all to you. And they kept, okay, well, we didn't even read them. They literally said that. What they did tell us, and we asked them, well, why didn't you believe the studies? Why didn't you open up the studies and read them? They said, because it wasn't on the news, and if it wasn't on the news, it couldn't possibly be true.
how does that hold up in a court of law though?
Well, they dropped the case.
That's what I mean. It's like I get that argument with, family or friends or, people in the comment section. And at a certain point, you have to just accept that there are individuals who are retarded. And you go, oh, I can't fight that.
I wouldn't even say that it's retarded. I think they're evil.
No, 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 no. Some people are stupid and they actually
Yeah.
go, it's not on the news. That's what I mean. That's not what I'm saying, though, about malicious and evil. I'm with you. I used to be very much on like, oh, they're just a bunch of, oh, shucks, versus now. I'm like, so I was going to say an example would be to say every decision they chose or they made was wrong during the pandemic. We call it wrong ethically and morally, and it is. But wrong in which is there consistency? And when I look at it and I go, it was consistently, if it was purely just stupid, public and private industries probably would have suffered on a, I would, let's just say 50-50%. But the fact that a handful of corporations made a ton of money tells me, oh, that's not stupid. They're just not they're just not, it's like saying, you know, the government's so stupid. They're just letting the southern border be perforated. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's a very deliberate plan and they're bringing it in and they want to get rid of voter ID. This is, if it was pure chance, they'd block half the immigrants and they only half the country would want voter ID. But the fact that they opened the border deliberately, I mean, they literally used a forklift to lift up the National Guard's razor wire, and then they get rid of voter ID, and then we're all going to do online, and blah 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 blah. That's not that's not stupid. That is a deliberate mechanism of action. It's just against you. It's your enemy is not stupid. They just hate you. So that's what I would say to it being a pandemic is I'd be like, no, it was pretty. It's like, well, what happened? Section 230 was thrown out the window. All these big corporations got in bed with the Biden administration, DHS, FBI, they all had backdoors into Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And then a ton of corporations made more money than God that they've ever made before. They made more money than like Halliburton after we invaded Iraq.
Oof.
And then anything you brought up against it was censored. A lot of doctors were threatened and had to, they were drowned in legal fees. On a smaller note, my show was thrown off most platforms. I look at that and I go, that's not stupid. That's maliciously evil. But back to them not reading it, I was going to say, well, how does that hold up in court? It's one thing if I argue with somebody in the comments. It's another thing legally. But you answered my question is they threw it out.
Yeah, they actually dropped the case after 4 years um, of back and forth. I mean, and I spent millions of dollars fighting it. But they actually dropped it because even their own expert witnesses pointed out and said, yes, what they said was true. They may not have documented it and had the proof the way the FTC wants it to be listed, but everything that we said was true.
For a neophyte like myself, do you recoup those legal
No.
fees? Do they have to? So, but nor, and again, I legitimately know nothing about this. In a normal legal battle, right? If you win, they have to, don't they have to pay your,
You can request legal fees, and sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't.
but,
If a civilian had filed this lawsuit against a civilian, I would say 100%, the judge would have given them back legal fees
but
simply
government,
because there was so much no there was such a non basis for the litigation that it wasn't there. The government had not done its job at all to do anything.
but so if the government sues you with nothing, it's just, hey, you're shit out of luck.
I think the government dropped it. Number one reason why I think that the government dropped its case is because they realized that we were going to win in a court, and what the government didn't want
Was a
was a
precedent?
judgment against them. Because if they got a judgment against them, that would change the way the FTC would have to do business.
Yeah, they don't want that precedent.
And they don't want that precedent. And I think it was within 2 or 3 months of them dropping their lawsuit, we'd actually filed a lawsuit against the FTC. It's a simple lawsuit. It's a declaratory action, which is we want a judge to go in and interpret the law as to what the FTC can and cannot require of companies before they sue them.
So the process is the punishment. You're still
Yeah.
out millions.
Well, I am out millions, but you've got to stand up and do the right thing when
Oh, I'm with you.
the
I,
time comes.
I'm with you. My podcast was gutted. It was slaughtered. That was a year and a half in when it was kicked off YouTube, iTunes, Facebook, Twitter. I was banned from websites I'd never even been on, like Twitch, which I guess is a gaming platform. I was banned from Twitch. I don't even,
Twitch. I've never heard of Twitch.
I guess I'm too old too. I was preemptively banned from it. I was like, fuck.
Wasn't Twitch a movie about a romance guy with
I don't know. But I know I'm
um,
banned from it, of whether it's a movie or a website. But my
yeah.
point is like, no, I'm totally with you in doing the right thing. You do have to kind of find that, and that's been a big theme of this podcast over the years, is like you do have to find a point where you are not okay with retreating over. I get if, well, I don't know, whatever. YouTube says you're not allowed to wear glasses in your videos. You'd be like, well, that's stupid, but I mean, I don't care enough. I'm going to grow my show. But when it gets to a point of you can't talk about this and you can't talk about these vaccines, and there's people, I'm 35 now, but at the time there's people my age, 30 years old, who are ending up in wheelchairs with strokes and they're having aneurysms and they're like, hey man, this stuff doesn't. 5-year-olds are having heart attacks and the cardiologists are saying they have the heart tissue of an 80-year-old. That's where you have to find the point and go, no, I can't. I can't shut up. But the the process is the punishment. I
Yeah.
got allowed back on YouTube about, I don't know. I
Well,
don't,
I'm trying, we're trying right now to change some other policies. I mean, we went back and filed with a thing with the FDA. I mean, if you want to get into crazy conspiracy theories, this is a good one, is the whole fluoride issue.
yeah, what is so the conspiracy being right that it calcifies your pineal gland and so you are more of a dumb sheep than not. And I say this as somebody who's I've been meditating every day since 2008. I use it. I firmly believe meditation is why I got into medical school. It's the only thing that
Oh,
allowed me to study all day. I got into medical school out of
I
college.
thought it was because you had a hardened pineal gland.
Well, no, but well, that's the idea. It's like if you didn't, you wouldn't meditate. You wouldn't have the inkling to meditate and to open your awareness, get closer with God. If you're hardened. So the thing is like I say that the whole pineal gland thing, kind of sarcastic, but I'm not. I think there's a lot to 8 hours of sleep, exercise, meditation, and prayer in terms of expanding yourself, becoming more clear, becoming. I really, it's helped me enormously. Um, the conspiracy being though, right? It's so they have to keep you dumb, which I'm at a point where I know conspiracy is too far from me. That's another thing the last 5 years have done. Like before
Well,
this podcast,
mean, so the question is, did we land on the moon?
I say yes, and it's because I don't see a value. The conspiracy should always be should always be sexier. The truth should always be sexier than the conspiracy. And when I say sexy, it doesn't necessarily mean good. Some people are stupid, like, well, there's nothing good about. No, in terms of it being a novel that you would read, right? The story is it was Lee Harvey Oswald. The conspiracy is sexier, that it was a cabal of CIA and the mob and defense contractors, right? The conspiracy, the story is it was 19 hijackers. The conspiracy is it was the CIA and and whoever took down the World Trade Center so we could go invade. The conspiracy should always be a sexier thing than what they're feeding you. That we faked it is not nearly as sexy as we went there. That's my only reason against it. I think it tactically would make sense to
You
fake
don't
it.
think a couple of guys sitting around saying we tricked the entire world into believing that we went to the moon?
They're evil, but there has to be a gain for it. Now, there are some. Can we trick the Soviets into bankrupting themselves? Absolutely. You absolutely could. I also think though that would have been a huge intelligence coup for the Soviets to it was not new the ability to track rockets. I think it would have been massive for them at a fraction of the cost of themselves going to the moon to send up an orbiter, because you got to remember the Soviets had actually crashed several drone landers before we ever went there. So they had the ability to get there. They had the ability to broadcast video. They were broadcasting video. Soviets were broadcasting video from the surface of Venus in the 70s, allegedly. If they're able to do that, then they would be able, right? Wouldn't it be in your best interest to go find that the Americans have faked it? Because the entire idea of why we went there, other than, find aliens, which we probably did, was to show that this is a
Wait, we
better
found
system.
aliens on the moon?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Why haven't we been back there? But my point is if the thing we're saying is, well, why do we go to the moon? So to bankrupt the Soviets into thinking they could, and or to show the world that we had a more preeminent system of society, that we could man it, we create things that are able to go to the moon. So it would be a huge incentive for them to prove we didn't go there. And I don't think what little do know, I don't think rocket telemetry was the bottleneck. I think they could have tracked it. Even if they couldn't go to the moon, I think they could have said, there's nothing going there. So I come down to not even on like I want it to be. I just rationally I would go. I think we probably went just because I think the Soviets would have disproven it if they could. That's the only reason. I am not above thinking that we would fake it. I am not above thinking the U.S. government did 9/11. Like no part of it is like they're not that evil. When I just walk it out in like a flow chart, I
They
go,
think that evil.
what?
Our government is that evil.
Well, that's what I mean. So that's the thing is like no part of me thinks that they wouldn't lie about going to the moon and be dishonest Boy Scouts. No, I just when I walk it out rationally, I think I think the Occam's razor answer is actually that we went. Not for any benefit of them. I just that's that's what I think. And to
Well,
find aliens, you know.
I want to find the aliens.
That much I do think. I do think we found aliens.
Do you think Three Eye Atlas is bringing us some alien life?
No.
Dang it. Dang it.
Why would the powers that be broadcast that? Why would they?
I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah, no, no. If it was legit, so like the
I'm just hoping
entire
we get some alien life around here.
I know, but the entire
Level up our intelligence or something.
well, I think the whole argument about, why they would keep it quiet isn't for what they say. It would dissolve society. No, it's because of power generation. The world is essentially held by the balls by the petrodollar. Power generation, the movement of electrons is that's the real sword of Damocles over every human on Earth. If you have something that gets you from a different star system, that thing's got power generation and power density beyond comprehension, which to us would be utopia. To the powers that be, hey, we can't have everyone by the balls if everyone just has infinite energy. So if you look at it from that point of view, it's about power generation and thus weapons technology. So they keep it quiet. That they are broadcasting this. If evil people are in charge and they want power, if they truly thought Three Eye Atlas was bringing alien life, I don't think you'd hear a word about it. Instead, they're broadcasting it, which tells me that it's horseshit
Well,
at best, and at worst, they're going to use it to usher in some new global Patriot Act for, global governance because the aliens are coming.
it's interesting. I'm anxious to see what happens with it. We got another couple weeks before it's gone.
I don't even know where it is.
Neither do I.
Yeah,
I could do a Google search and say, where is Three Eye Atlas? They'd probably just say, I don't know.
just out there. I mean, devil's advocate would be maybe it is real and there's just no way of hiding it.
Yeah, I think wasn't it? I'm trying to remember who it was. Was it an amateur astronomer that first pointed it out? I know that because of the government shutdown, that NASA and none of the governments were giving out pictures of it
Yeah.
for the one. I mean, they claimed it was a government shutdown.
Yeah, I don't know. When I look at something like, I always point to these. It's one thing when there's a classified operation, right? We're going to go raid and kill this person, CIA, Black Ops. Okay. There's another level of sort of boldness, and it's a classified project. The development of the F-117 stealth fighter, the development of the SR-71, the development of the B-2, whatever. Okay. And then there's another level above that in terms of just boldness, and it's a classified department, right? So operation, that's like a 1 day thing. Project, that's a couple year thing. Department. So not only does the time go up, but the number of people involved goes up. A Bin Laden raid, you maybe have what, I don't know, 20 operators and 2 pilots and a couple intel guys. A project like the B2 or something, I don't know, maybe 5,000 people involved, and it's done over a series of years. A department, 50,000 people. You look at the NRO and the NSA, both of those departments or agencies, the departments themselves, their existence was classified for over 30 years. Like that's how big, and this is just verifiable US history. The fact that departments were classified for decades that tells me that I don't think Trump created Space Force. I think it was declassified. And then if you walk that out and then just use the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, which looks down at the Earth, and same with the National Geospatial Agency, take Space Force and the NRO, why wouldn't we have something that's also looking out? And if that's the case, I don't think an I don't think an amateur astronomer found something that we didn't. And if they did, then it seems like it's an op.
Well, maybe they saw something that they're afraid of, and that's why they created Space Force or declassified it. That's
Yeah,
an interesting
I
opinion.
don't, no, I think that could be true. I'm not saying why they made it. They either made it for orbital weapons, which I think is a huge piece. I mean, just to further go down this, I mean, what was the power of air power in World War II? The entire ability was you no longer have to march men over there. You can just fly there faster, carry bombs, and do it from high up. Okay, then what was the huge importance of bringing back Nazi scientists to get liquid and solid fueled rockets? Well, now instead of a 9 hour flight with a bomber, you could do a 30-minute rocket to deliver something. Okay, so that's again from men marching to planes to rockets. The entire thing is how quickly can you get a weapons package to your target, and how hard is it to defend? In a plane, you're 30,000 feet up. A rocket's coming from orbit at Mach 23. Go one step further. How would you cut the delivery time from 30 minutes down even further? Well, vertically, the International Space Station is only 220 miles up.
But
So
don't we have, I thought we had treaties, and we're so far off the topic of public health, but I thought we had treaties that we could not base weapons in outer space.
yeah, I'm sure we also have treaties that you can't do 9/11. You
Well,
know what? Well,
those would have to be treaties. Those would have to be treaties with our own government.
yeah. I mean, well, yeah, you guys also can't do gain of function research.
It's true.
I mean, come on, it's so if you're
It's true.
220 miles up, that
Yeah.
flight time is what? I don't know, 30 seconds. You're shooting a projectile straight down. So I think that's probably what space. We can bring it entirely back to public health. I don't care. This is.
Yeah.
I think a lot of. Maybe there's a related theme though with all of this.
It's
A,
incompetence.
it's incompetence, but it's also the boldness and competence of these people. It's not all knuckle draggers. A lot of you can't be stupid if you set up the NRO and run it classified for 30 years, cameras in orbit. That's not that's
Yeah.
not competence. So to tie that back to, you know, nasal hygiene, is it incompetence or is it a directed sabotage?
I think it's complete incompetence because I mean you could sit there and once someone points out and says, where did 99% of all the bacteria and viruses enter your body? Right here. You would make sense that if you could put something into your snot, into your mucosal layer that destroys a virus or a bacteria or blocks it from adhering, that's probably the best thing you could possibly do. Logically, that just on the face of it, that seems rather straightforward logically. I mean, go back and then look at it at warfare. If you could put something on your beach that would stop the enemy from attaching itself to your mainland, you would do that, would you not?
Correct.
Okay. So the question is why throughout history have we not done that? And you can go and look at through history, and you brought up an example of this earlier, even though you didn't mention his name, but you can go back to 1850, and you had Dr. Semmelweis, Ignaz
Hmm.
Semmelweis in Austria, and he's considered the father of hygiene. But
Hmm.
he actually just said, hey, we need to wash our hands between working on dead people and living people. And, he published a paper saying we just started washing our hands and our death rate went down from 1 in 3 down or 1 in 4 down to 2%. And, but the other doctors, they said, nah, 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 we don't, none of this crap, nah, nah. And they actually ran him out of town. They committed him to an insane asylum where they had the guards beat him and he actually died from the beatings that he got there. They would not allow his name to be printed in the list of people of doctors who died. I don't know what it was, but the point of it is the establishment, the medical establishment has a long record of pushing back against any concept of hygiene or sanitation. John Snow, who's considered the father of epidemiology today, when he was a doctor in London, and he went into the city and he said, "Hey, these cholera epidemics that you're having, they're coming because of the sewage. You need to put a sewer system so that you're getting all of the waste out of the city." And at this point, they still believe that disease was caused by a smell. Miasma is what they called it. And the doctors are, no, no, no. And he went down famously. He goes, "I am right. I know I'm right. The cholera is coming out of the water in this pump." He went down, took the handle off the pump, and they stopped getting cholera. The cholera epidemic ended. The crazy thing is, they waited until he was dead before they actually installed a sewer in London. That's how petty and vindictive they were. But after he died, they installed a sewer in London, and they have had zero cholera epidemics since then. Okay. Another one is Sarah Jo Baker here in New York. And this was in the early 1900s, but they put her in charge of going in and educating the poorer people in Manhattan. And within a couple of months, she'd reduced the baby death
Yeah.
rate by a ridiculous amount. And the doctors famously went to the mayor and said, "No, we want you to stop. We want her gone because we don't have patients."
There's a book about that by Richard Rhodes, The 50,000 Babies of Dr. Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And famously, she actually went to the Congress of the United States and said, "Hey, we need to implement programs like this across the country." And the American Medical Association fought back. And this is, I'm going to paraphrase it because I can't quote it. I should memorize it, but it's incredibly how bad the American Medical Association and the American Dental Association protect their business. But in this case, they're arguing in front of senators, and the lawyer for the American Medical Association, I'm trying to remember how this is, said something along the lines of, what was it that he said? He said something, one of the senators, I'm trying to remember how it was, but the line that came out of it was that God, if they went and passed this law and saved all these people, then no one would want to go in and work in the field of medicine
What?
because people wouldn't be getting sick. And so it was God's will that people died, that these kids would die, that we allowed them to die so that people would go into medicine. I gotta find this. I gotta find this real. I'll find it, and you should put it in the footnotes. But it's a crazy conversation back and forth between a lawyer representing the AMA and a senator.
And then you also have the example of, I think around the same time as Semmelweis is Dr. Joseph Lister.
Yeah,
And his whole
he
thing
was he
about,
was about 40 years after
okay. Yeah. His whole,
Semmelweis.
there's a great book about him called The Butchering Art. It's actually a fantastic book by Lindsay Fitzharris. And, it's about, yeah, the crazy idea that he's like, I've been doing this thing where if I dip the scalpel in ethanol, like, yeah, it's something like instead of 50% of my patients dying, it's like 1 in 500. And they were like, get out of here. You're insane. You're insane at best. You're a demon at worst. They would like, and people would be, doctors would be lecturing him, and they'd be in these like white coats that they never washed. They're just covered with like blood and pus. And they'd be like, that's nonsense. He came to the United States, and I think he went on like a train tour. Same thing, was like laughed out of town. And when he went back to I guess England, because he was such a good doctor, they're like, hey, like we'll level with you. Like you can be a doctor, you just have to drop the whole like ethanol shit. Like stop doing that. And
You got to let a high level of your patients die.
yeah. And I think eventually what happened is I think it was royalty, some unofficial member of like I guess to get the royal succession privately was having him do surgeries because they wouldn't die. And then that trickled down. And he's one of the few cases where he actually lived to have his name cleared. It almost never happens, but he's
Yeah.
one of the few cases. And so, yeah, I would say, yeah, that's incompetent. It's incompetence. And also it's a mixture. It's incompetence, but it's also evil. It's a groupthink thing that, don't do this because we've never done this, and that's not logic. That's just momentum. I think with something like well, I guess what we're specifically what we saw with COVID, it was less of incompetence and more of there was a financial incentive to not use monoclonal antibodies or ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. I guess the question to come back to nasal hygiene would be, is this pure incompetence or is there a financial incentive? Can you give me like 1 minute though? I gotta go use the restroom. I'll be right back and then we'll continue with everything.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be the $1 trillion question is it incompetence like Lister and Semmelweis? Because I don't believe there was a financial incentive for them to not adapt Lister's thing. I don't think there was some counter, whatever. I don't think, big coffin was saying, no, you can't do that because then we're gonna, not sell as many coffins. But with COVID, it was very clear that they don't want you to use ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine instead of this brand new thing they came up with that doesn't work and it kills most people. There's a massive financial incentive. So I guess that might even be a not perfect, but decent barometer or scale or whatever to determine, is this incompetence or is this malice? So to bring it back to nasal hygiene, is there a massive financial incentive for this to not be talked about or taught? And if not, then would that not just be incompetence?
I think there's a huge financial incentive, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Um, we have so there's been published studies about our nasal spray and babies and ear infections in babies. Okay, just using a nasal spray twice a day reduced the incidence of ear infections in babies by 75%. Okay, you could use a nasal spray with iota carrageenan. Again, that's a sugar, it's a polysaccharide that comes out of seaweed. They did studies on it during COVID, but if you use one of those, it reduced the incidence of COVID by 80%. You could use a nasal spray that has half of the amount of xylitol that we use, and it reduced the incidence of COVID by 62%. Okay. And so the list keeps going on. Even if you just use saline, okay, there was a study that came out in May of 2020, and it came out of Vanderbilt University. And prior to 2020, prior to COVID, the CDC had on its website that the way to treat a respiratory coronavirus infection was by using saline irrigation, just rinsing out your nose with water, physically reducing the viral load. This paper came out in May of 2020, and they looked at patients that had COVID. All of the patients were over 65. They all had COVID. They tested positive. They had symptoms, all that other stuff. And in less than a week, they were all better with using nothing other than salt water. Okay. There was a paper that came out and it was published in the British Medical Journal or the Lancet, one of those two, last year, where they showed that even if you're sick and you just use salt water, nothing else other than salt water, which physically reduces the viral load without killing a virus or a bacteria or destroying it, it reduces the need for antibiotics by like 60%. So all of these things, so roughly you're looking at about let's say 60+% decrease in the need for medical care for respiratory illnesses. Okay, you're talking a huge amount of money.
That's so that I'd say that makes it pretty apparent then that this is malice and not incompetence.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you want to go further on it. In early 2020, going back to oral hygiene, if our government, if public health actually talked intelligently about oral hygiene, we could save literally $1 trillion a year on our healthcare expenses in this country because there's so many systemic illnesses that start in the mouth. Okay. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was yet another. This is the third paper that's come out that's pointed out that even Parkinson's disease is caused by the same bacteria in our mouth that causes tooth decay.
Oh yeah, it's like the plaque, amyloid plaque.
It's well, that's Alzheimer's, but again, Alzheimer's is tied to bad oral hygiene. Parkinson's, you get the strep mutans bacteria, it gets in your gut and it's making this toxin that gets into your brain, but it's still the strep mutans bacteria. And the crazy part about the way our public health agencies and the dental industry as a whole address tooth decay is the perfect example. I can't find a better one. It is the perfect example of how our healthcare system and our public health agencies look at disease. Treat the symptom and ignore the disease. Because what they talk about is fluoride. And fluoride does not treat the bacterial infection. We've known since 1924 that tooth decay is caused by a strep mutans bacterial infection in our mouth. Okay? We understand that. We know that. But when was the last time you went to the dentist and they said, hey, you know what? You have a bacterial infection in your mouth and you're getting cavities. Let's treat the bacterial infection. No, what they do is they say brush and floss and use fluoride. All fluoride does, all they claim that it does, is it remineralizes your enamel. It makes your enamel stronger. It makes your enamel more resistant to the acid created by the bacteria, which then allows the bacteria to continue to grow.
I think also they say that fluoride, one of the steps, I think it was biochemistry. I think fluoride also acts as an inhibitor in one of the steps that I don't know, where it's essentially sugars like coagulating and condensing to harden plaque. That's I think in theory is one of it. Is it also
It could
stops
be.
the formation? I don't that was 15
Well,
years
no,
ago.
fluoride doesn't stop the formation of plaque.
There's something and I remember in the biochemical it stops something. I don't know what it is. It's probably not
Yeah.
it stops
It
something.
might so they do make a claim that one form of fluoride does do a little bit of interrupting reproduction of bacteria.
That might be it.
Okay, but
Yeah, I have no idea
it's
what
not
percentage.
that
Yeah.
effective and it's a very loose claim
Again, I would say the fact that there's a massive financial benefit. It's
to all of us being sick.
that's where I tend to look at it and go, this isn't incompetence. This is,
Malice.
yeah. I mean, because again, with incompetence, you could say things like Semmelweis or Lister, where okay, I mean, sure, you could say maybe some people are just satanic and they want everyone to die. Okay, but that's a convenient excuse. You could say, that's no, and I would think in general, something like those seem like incompetence because they all have family members. They're probably dying when they go to the hospital. And there didn't seem to be a major benefit to not, other than ego and the established order and doctrine, almost com Copernican, but there didn't seem to be an incentive to not to not wash your hands. That seemed more kind of like ego involved. Like, no, we know it. We know that we're the center of the universe. This doesn't seem to be that.
You want to hear an interesting tidbit about washing your hands?
Do I?
When do you think it became standard of care for physicians to wash their hands between sick patients?
Now that you pose it as a question, I'm going to think it's an absurd answer. So I say 1950,
No,
1980.
1998.
Oh, I was going to say originally I would say, I don't know, 1890, but then the fact that you asked the question tells me that it's going to be a shocking answer. So I was going to
It
say
was
1924,
1998. It was actually the
1990.
Hep C and the
What in
AIDS crisis
what in
that drove that.
what in the Wow. Yeah, I guess that also kind of goes to show like one of the things you have to do being like a pre-med you have to go volunteer and shadow at the hospital. You learned nothing. It was just to you
What year did you do that?
I graduated University of Georgia in 2013, so I was probably doing that
Okay.
2011, 12, 13. I was 21
But
at the
by
time.
then, and by then, most of the doctors were wearing gloves. But I'm 55,
Yeah.
and when I was a child, I remember going to the doctor and the dentist, and they didn't wash their hands. They didn't have gloves.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I could only recall on my own memory, and it was like, yeah, no, it was pretty like set in st yeah, you couldn't go between two rooms without watch. So I guess that's why it seemed more absurd to me now. But that's recency bias. That's insane. 1998. So with there being a financial incentive, I think that in the court of law that is this podcast episode, we've established there's a financial incentive. Um, okay. So when I look at something like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, I also try to unpack it further and go, once it becomes so apparent that this other thing is super effective, you would then have to take the same logic of these are just capital hungry evil corporations on this like a commie. You would then look at something like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. I just look at it as like a puzzle. If you're just a psychopath, they would go, well, if we can make like an enantiomer, if we can make it a deviation, we'll call it ivermectex. We could put that out there and make 10 times as much money. So then you see it's not really about yes or no people dying. It's about making money. So I mean you see that with certain marijuanas in the US. There's certain like Delta 312 THC and they
Yeah,
make a
I'm trying to
shitload of
think.
money.
There was a drug. In fact, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Merck that made ivermectin, and they actually made a comment that you shouldn't be using it. But I think that they actually had patented a drug incredibly similar to
Yeah,
ivermectin.
it's like one hydrogen atom. But so that's my
Yeah,
point is so if
and
you
but they had actually patented it to treat COVID.
so my point exactly, right? It's like the idea of like you can't use psilocybin for, mental health. Well, how are we going to sell, Prozac? Eventually, one of these corporations is going to make psilocybex, and then they're going to go, all right, bring it to market because everyone knows it works. So by that logic, wouldn't you eventually see some company out of pure evilness eventually make one of these products for nasal health and they'll screw you and they say it's a proprietary formula, but wouldn't they eventually do that?
I hope not. What I would like to see is more companies coming into the nasal hygiene space. I would like more companies coming into the dental hygiene space that are looking at dental hygiene as the goal of a good hygiene product is managing the gateway microbiome into your mouth or into your nose. If you're using a product that kills everything in your mouth or your nose, if you're using, let's say, a high alcohol mouthwash that just scorches the earth, if you're using a mouthwash that says, hey, we kill 99.9% of the bacteria, well, even if you have a high level of caries, only about 10 to 15% of the bacteria are pathogenic. The other bacteria are the ones that help us digest gluten and milk and a whole bunch of the rest of our
Yeah,
foods. And if we get into the habit of
just
just beating
killing
them
it
all
all.
down and killing them, you would expect to see an increase of gluten intolerance, lactose intolerance, and all of this other stuff in our society, which is exactly what we see because we've been using these for decades.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking of that years ago. I was like, this can't be the right move to just torch your mouth every day. Now I'm an idiot and I still do, but it's the same idea as like, well, shouldn't we all just take antibiotics every day? Well, no, because you're destroying the good gut biome and then the gut brain axis, you're actually affecting your mental health. So we know not to do that, right? It's the same, it's like why you shouldn't, laxatives are like a temporary use, not long term, because you go scorched earth on your intestines. And who knows how long it takes to regrow it and blah, blah. And I know you can take probiotics, but yeah, it's even say more companies getting involved in those spaces. I think they eventually would, and it would be for nefarious reasons. But if they thought that they could make money, I feel like they would.
There's not a lot of money to be made in it. I mean, we've been doing this for 25 years,
Yeah,
and we're probably the big one of the biggest companies out there in nasal hygiene. I mean, you have salt water, which I guess I would consider them nasal hygiene, but they're basic. I mean, the way that I compare it is, sometimes you come in from outside and you just rinse your hands with water, right?
sure.
You just rinse it. And that's what saline is in your nose. That's what, sometimes you just have a bad taste in your mouth and just get some water and swish it around and spit it out.
The manual
Okay.
removal. Yeah.
That's basic. That's basic hygiene. Going and using a toothpaste, using a mouthwash other than one that has a lot of alcohol in it or chlorhexidine or iodine, any of those. That's the next step where you're actually trying to regulate the microbiome in a positive way to where you're supporting it and pushing it and head, toward being a healthy commensal microbiome. And all of our products fit into that category. Our nasal spray, we have studies published in the medical literature talking about that, where they took a bunch of people that were chronically sick. They started using our nasal spray, and a couple of months later, they remeasured it, and their whole commensal microbiome had shifted to what we know is a healthier commensal microbiome. And then the far other aspect of it is you can use hand sanitizers, you can use chlorhexidine, you can use iodine nasal sprays. And there's a time and a place for those, but those are all scorched earth. And you don't want to go and kill everything in your mouth. You don't want to kill everything in your nose. You don't want to kill everything on your hands.
Do you see any like, are there any different, I guess, approaches internationally? Because again, that was sort of another thing that supported the theory that, the US was being, you know, unscientifically, unethically suppressed against ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine was you did see it in other countries. So that's kind of one thing where you
That
can,
was global. That was a global thing.
sure, but you
But
did have
most of
other.
your pharmaceutical stuff is global.
No, 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 I know that, but what I mean is like not every country has the exact same law. So something like India, very early on, they were handing out hydroxychloroquine. I think even Mexico was at the airport. You could go get a little packet of ivermectin,
Yeah.
hydroxychloroquine, and zinc. Um, is there a difference in the general? So, just take the idea that America pharmaceutically is probably the most corrupt. Do you see a difference in nasal hygiene in other countries in the same way we saw some difference, not total, but because it was a global campaign, but you still saw some difference internationally during COVID?
When it comes to nasal hygiene, I don't know that I saw that much of a difference anywhere. I know that you can go to India and even in the Muslim tradition, they'll sit and wash their noses as part of their daily hygiene before they go and pray. I know that in India they use, that's where neti pots come from. And even neti pots, they don't encourage people to use them, with a high rate of frequency. But you can go in and there's companies here in the US that are encouraging people to do it every day, twice a day. And to me, that's ridiculous. It's crazy. I can't even understand how they get away with it. And what I'm saying there is, I mean, I don't know how crude we can get, and it's not crude. I mean, it's scientific, but I'll give you a doctor's take on it, is what they're doing when you use a high volume rinse. And we sell one because there is a time and a place for it, but twice a day, every day, even once a day, every day is way too much, because what you're doing is you're flushing away all your snot. You're flushing away the entire protective mucosal layer. So that's not hygiene, okay? Because it's not supportive. What you're doing is you're flushing all of it out. Does that make sense, what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Hmm.
If you know what I'm talking about, the big motorized and the big squeeze bottles that
Yeah.
lots of water and it pours out. But what you're doing is you're cleaning out all of that protective layer of snot. It takes a couple hours for that to get back. But if you go look up a Dr. Talal Nasuli, just do a Google search of Talal Nasuli. He's actually published papers showing that what's happening is you're cleaning all that out. And it takes your body about 4 hours to recreate that mucosal layer, which means that everything, all the underlying tissue is exposed to bacteria and viruses for that 4 hours. And what he compares it to is if you go back in the 1900s, doctors were telling women to use douches a lot.
Hmm.
And they ended up stopping that because they realized they were creating more harm. They were causing more harm
Destroying all
than
the
good
endometrial tissue.
because they were cleaning everything out. And so, and this doctor has actually published papers where he's pointed out that he had one study that he had published where he just took a bunch of people that were using neti pots every day, that were rinsing every day. And he said, okay, stop, just stop. And about within a couple of weeks, over 60% of their symptoms were all gone. They were creating their own illness.
Is that kind of similar to people that use like a steroid nasal spray to clear up stuff sinuses, but like very quickly you become addicted to it and you need
Oh,
it to breathe?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it seems more of almost like a very broadly that seems almost more like a chemotherapy approach. You're just going scorched earth. You're just nuking it,
Yeah.
which there's a time and a place for, but that
But
certainly shouldn't be the standard.
we overuse that time and a place.
Yeah. So what realistically then can people, what can me, the knuckle dragger, who I've learned more about nasal hygiene in the last hour than I have in my life, what can they do? I mean, I would imagine, and this is where the pitch comes in for the product, but what can the average person do?
Well, what I would do is, I mean, we have nasal sprays. What I would do is first of all, what I don't want to do is make people think that I'm sitting here
Sure, no, I know
shilling
that.
for a product.
I know
What I
that.
want to do is point out that if you really want to, stick it to the man, if you want to stick it to the pharmaceutical companies, go and start practicing better nasal hygiene. If you don't want to use our products, find somebody else's products. Because the whole concept is it's such a simple concept that if you have a healthy nose and a healthy mouth, those are your gateway microbiomes. All of the pathogens are going to have to come through that. Okay. So get a nasal spray. Hopefully you choose ours. Ours is clear. It's spelled Xlear. You can find it at CVS, Walgreens, Target. I mean, you can find it everywhere. It's in all your grocery stores. It's everywhere. But we do know that it blocks RSV. We do know that it blocks SARS-CoV-2. We do know that it blocks H1N1. We know that it blocks bird flu. We know that it blocks staph, strep pneumo, H flu, MCAT, all of these pathogens. We know that it blocks. There's other nasal sprays out there that you can buy, whether they're using iota carrageenan. And iota carrageenan, again, is a polysaccharide. It's a seaweed extract, very similar in concept, but they just don't have as much data backing up all the wide variety of things that it does. But you can buy that. Or if you just want to use saline, just use a saline, but start using it on a regular basis because that is what, better hygiene is going to improve longevity and quality of life much better than pharmaceuticals are.
Can you tell the story about and we'll kind of come to a close with this. Can you tell the story you told me about meeting Alex Jones and your dad? That's because I think it's a legitimately good story.
Well, first you have to understand that my dad is an incredibly liberal. And then I'll even add a little something else onto this that happened at the same time. My dad is an incredibly liberal person, like very liberal. I can't, you
Sure.
know, these I'm on the right. I'm a conservative person. I'm a Republican. Anyways, so when the government was suing us, Alex Jones said, "Hey, come down, come on my show. I want you to talk about this. This is crazy. Come on down." And so I went down to Texas, Austin, where he does his show, and and my dad flew down there, and just to because my dad was actually going to fly back to Utah with me, and so we go over to go on Alex Jones and go on his show. And my dad is sitting over in the audience. Well, there wasn't really an audience, but he's sitting over on the side. And we're talking about it and we're talking on the air, and somehow something came up about, I had 13 brothers and sisters, 14 kids in my family. And Alex Jones goes, "What? What? Wait a minute. Is that your old man over there? Is that your dad? Get over here. Get him a chair. Bring him over." And he just brought him up on the show and had him start talking about different things about life, 14 kids. Well, yeah, okay. Anyways, but he had him up there. But the other part of that was really funny is my brother, one of my brothers, I have a number of them, but one of my brothers was sitting in the hospital with his wife who had had an aneurysm, and they were watching this Alex Jones show because I was on it, but no one had ever said that my dad was going to be on it. And one of my other siblings texted my sister-in-law who had had the aneurysm and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And she responded and said, "Well, I'm sitting here in the hospital watching my son's head ex watching my husband's head explode." Because none of them thought that my dad would ever
In a
appear in
million
the Alex
years.
Jones show.
Yeah, that's got to be a hell freezing over moment. Get him over here. Get him up here. Come talk about your kids.
But no, that was actually an amazing thing. I mean, I have 100%. I liked Alec Jones and I watched him a lot before that. But when you go on there and you watch the way, I mean, I still can't get over, you'd be having a conversation and you'd be talking, and he would be talking to two or three other people at the same time, but he's carrying on the conversation with you without ever missing a beat.
Oh, his brain is insane.
Yeah.
He is insane. Not only is he I think one of the intentionally or unintentionally. Not only do I think is he one of the funniest people alive, but no, his he's got like a V16 engine brain. You're
Oh,
talking.
yeah.
Yeah, no, he's a wild guy. No, yeah, I mean, I have some more left-leaning family members, and one of them went with me when I met Alex Jones, and he was just like, dude, that was awesome. That guy is so cool. That guy is so funny. Alex is great, man.
I think he's amazing.
No, he's awesome. I love him. Listen, he's a globalist. Um,
He actually posted something the other day that I took a picture of, and I meant to share it with some of my siblings, but it was I'll share it with you. Um, give me a second. But it was pretty interesting that he said because he said the ultimate the ultimate red pill. You know what his ultimate red pill is?
mm,
He goes, "You don't know you've been red pill." He goes, "The red pill isn't more information. It's getting on your knees, repenting, and asking God to cleanse you and reveal your mission." Okay? Reveal your mission. And he says when you truly do it, days, months, years, the real guidance starts flowing and it's never wrong. It's not politics, it's not fear. It's just pure raw hope from the loudest voice on earth. Have you ever felt something bigger guiding you that you couldn't explain? So the red pill is actually knowing and understanding that something isn't right and that God is the only way that you can that God is the ultimate guide to guide you through the chaos.
I've definitely found that specifically with the podcast over the last 6 years or so. Before that, I had my own goals of, whatever, get into med school and work out and whatever. With the podcast, and it is such a crazy hurricane of variables and things you can't predict and change. And, you know, it didn't matter when I was just studying OChem, but now it does matter. It's like, well, who's in office here and what happens there and what company is doing this and will I be able to broadcast and who can I talk to and how am I going to network? And the only thing I found, I'd say less than the last year or so, is to stop having my own goals because I'll have very simple goals of like grow the podcast, make money, the end. I've found by
Your goal should be change the world.
well, I found better as I ask God to show me what He wants and to pursue that. And often it rationally doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's like go do this, yeah, go do that, and then you go and do the thing, and doors start to open, and you start to find bridges, and the doors unlock, and the blah blah blah, and it's terrifying because none of it really makes sense. It'd be like if you had never used GPS before, and never even heard of GPS before, and all of a sudden you have this little box. It's like turn left. You're like, all right. And it's like, but I never go this way. And it's like, well, you never go that way because you didn't know that way existed. To go a new way, to find a shortcut, you have to go somewhere where you previously didn't think the shortcut was. The shortcut, you didn't just create the shortcut, it's always been there. You just find the shortcut. You go, oh, I never knew that this road led to that exit. And oh man, I've been driving like an idiot all these years. That's the best way I could describe asking God for guidance is because again, we've all been there. You've all been in a place where you've lived your whole life and you find a shortcut, but the road's been there for your entire life, and you're like, I've always been going this way and sitting at that light, and I had no idea you could just cut through that parking lot. That's what I'd say is and well then how do you do that? If you had known it, you would have done it. So how do you do it is you get guidance, and the guidance on its face seems like that's stupid because it doesn't make sense. And that's what a shortcut is finding a way that you previously had just blocked off as, well, it can't be that. And then you go and do it and you find it. I'd say that's, he's 100% correct in that. Is going, I'm not going to figure this out. Even the best of us are still human. We're still sinful, flawed people. The best way is to essentially say, hey, God, I am beyond stupid. Can you break it down? Can you break it down into like sock puppets for me? Thank you.
Well, I agree. I don't know about all the way to sock puppets, but I do agree.
What I mean is you got to get to a point. You don't talk to a 2-year old like they're an adult. It's very simple, like that bad. Inside voice. Say please. You're not talking about you're not using examples about the NRO and I3A Atlas to with a child it's like, would you like if that happened to you? No. Okay, well then don't do that's what I mean. God is infinitely above us, so he has to break it down into like, all right, if I have 3 apples and I give one to Susie, how many do I have left? Two. Like, there you go. That's what I mean. Um,
There you go.
but dude, that was
Okay.
fun. I appreciate it, man. Send me the link to your company or any links you want in the description. I'll copy and paste them and then put them into the description. And yeah, man, that
Okay.
was fun. I appreciate your time.
That works. Anytime.
All right, brother. Well, hey, it's great to meet you. Great to hang out. Thanks for shooting the shit with me, and we'll do it again sometime. I'll send you this
Okay.
episode. You send me those links, and we'll wrap it up. Thank you so
That
much, man.
works. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Hey guys, real quick, you guys know Basil Baz, ARC, the Association for the Recovery of Children. I just did a fundraiser with them the other day, and I'm going to put this on to every episode I do. They are special forces veterans who physically rescue trafficked children. They have since 1993. They have a 100% success rate. They do not take salaries. They all have day jobs, and they literally rescue sex trafficked children. Donations to them are a tax write-off. I get nothing from them, and they have not asked me to put this on. I've included this little clip on episodes for the last year or so, and I'm just re-recording it because I just got to meet him just 2 days ago for future. It's November 25th, 2025, but this will be on every episode now for the next year. And there is nothing better you can do with your money. Um, if you can support them for even $5, please do that. It is, they truly are doing the Lord's work, and I think we all have an obligation to do that. Thank you so much.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com
Hey guys, a huge sponsor of the show is Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. Clayton lives down in Georgia. He's been on the show before. It's actually nearby where I went to college. They are a huge sponsor of the show. They give me some money every month, even when I don't sell enough to warrant that paycheck. Meaning that the show is not free. It's just that it's free for you. If you guys need prepper food or if you're just interested in supporting the show, I'd please ask you to go to the link in the description. Go to Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, promo code TPC for 10% off. 72 servings per pail, 25-year shelf life. These things are, they double as dumbbells. Pasta Primavera, cheesy potato soup, mac and cheese, loaded baked potato casserole, chili mac, cheddar broccoli soup, cheesy lasagna, teriyaki rice. You can get banana chips. There's also raspberries, strawberries, and apples. There's a bunch of freeze-dried fruit, or you can even get seeds to plant your own garden. It's not a bad thing to have. It's like gold or ammunition. It's a good thing to have. It's a bad thing if you have to use it, but it's good. It's good to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. So that's what I'd say. And if you just want to support the show, please go to the link in the description. Please go support them because they support me. Thank you so much, guys.